Yo guys, after the critical and commercial disappointment of On Her Majesty's Secret Service, Sean Connery returned for the seventh James Bond movie, Diamonds Are Forever, released in 1971. So let's talk about it. So, Diamonds Are Forever, the return of Sean Connery and the director of Goldfinger, and a follow up to On Her Majesty's Secret Service. So, this must be one epic Bond adventure, right? Well, let's start talking about the negatives. And the problems of this movie already start in the pre-title sequence. Coming off On Her Majesty's Secret Service, this movie already feels and looks a whole lot cheaper. And you expect this to be an epic follow-up to On Her Majesty's Secret Service, but the events of On Her Majesty's Secret Service are pretty much entirely ignored in this movie. It starts with Bond being pissed off searching for Blofeld, which indicates he's going out for revenge, but the death of his wife and Irma Bond are never mentioned in this movie. And from there, this movie just becomes a pretty generic Bond adventure. We have diamonds into the mix, and the whole plot isn't all that interesting. And we never really learn what the diamonds are for exactly. We see them smuggled from place to place to place until they end up on Blofeld's giant satellite. We don't know what they exactly do. Does it make the satellite look more shiny, or does it have a function? I don't know. It's never mentioned in the movie. And speaking of that satellite, the sequence where we see the destruction of the satellite looks absolutely horrendous in its effects. Yes, I know this is a movie from 1971, but even the Bond movies from the 60s had better special effects than this. And even the return of Sean Connery doesn't lift this movie up that much, unfortunately. By this point, he is very out of shape, and he looks much older than he did in his previous movies. It was only 4 years since You Only Live Twice, and he looks like he's gotten 15 years older. I don't know what happened in between movies, but man, Sean Connery does not look great in this movie anymore, unfortunately. And the Blofeld of this movie is to this day the worst incarnation of Blofeld. Charles Gray was horribly miscast. He is too British and too posh to be Blofeld. And this Blofeld is seen in drag. He dresses up as a woman in this movie. I don't know how they got that idea. And most of the Roger Moore Bond movies suffer from some tonal inconsistencies, but this is where those tonal inconsistencies really started. For the most part, this movie is pretty lighthearted and played for laughs, but then all of a sudden you have this extremely dark scene where Bond almost gets cremated alive, which is just absolutely horrifying. And the action in this movie also doesn't live up to On Her Majesty's Secret Service, or even the ones before it. The car chases in this movie look rather dull, and we had much better car chases in Goldfinger and Thunderball and You Only Live Twice. And speaking of those movies, this movie doesn't have any of the charm that the Bond movie of the 60s had. Here we go to Las Vegas, which doesn't look that exotic as the Bahamas or Japan look. And the cinematography is also isn't great. This movie is looks very cheap. And most Bond fans put us in the bottom five or even at the very bottom, which I can understand. But I also have some positive things about this movie. And as badly as out of shape as Sean Connery is in this movie, he gives a much better performance in this one than he did in You Only Live Twice. He looks like he's having a lot more fun in this one. And the title song and the music throughout is pretty terrific in this movie. And as bad as this movie is throughout, it at least is a funny type of bad. It isn't like Quantum of Solace that it's very boring and just unwatchable. And I do have to admit, I have some nostalgia for this movie because this was the very first Sean Connery Bond movie that I saw when I was getting into Bond. And this movie has some generally funny moments that got me laughing out loud a couple of times. And this is, to this date, the only Bond movie where James Bond visits the Netherlands. He goes to Amsterdam in this movie. And I've actually been to a few filming locations of this movie in Amsterdam. And in Amsterdam we get probably the best action scene of this movie. The fight in the elevator. That was pretty good. And the henchmen, Mr. Kidd and Mr. Wind, are pretty memorable too. Maybe for the wrong reasons, but at least they're memorable. Unlike the villains in Quantum of Solace. And it's probably the best to view this movie more as a comedy than a spy action thriller, because it isn't exciting or thrilling, but it is funny. So like I said, admittedly I have some nostalgia for this movie, but objectively speaking, this is not a good Bond movie. And because of my nostalgia, I'm gonna give this movie a 5.5 out of 10 overall, but a 6 on the entertainment scale. And this is a movie you should only watch if you're a die-hard Bond fan. Now comment down below your thoughts about Diamonds Are Forever. Do you hate it like a lot of people do? Or are you one of those rare people that loves it? Or are you like me that thinks it's just okay? Whatever your thoughts may be, comment them down below. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I will return.